There's a quiet moment you probably recognize. Someone reacts to you in a way that feels off. Maybe they misunderstand your tone. Maybe they seem hurt, distant, or disappointed. And before you even decide what you want to do, your body leans forward. Your mind starts working fast. You feel the urge to explain yourself, to clarify, to make sure they really know what you meant. And underneath that urge, there's often a familiar exhaustion, like you already know how this ends. If that feels close to home, you're not doing anything wrong. You're responding from a nervous system that learned a long time ago that being understood felt like being safe. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why explaining became such a powerful reflex for you, why it quietly steals your peace, and what to do instead without becoming cold, detached, or unkind. Let's open two important loops right away. The first is this: you don't over-explain because you lack confidence. You over-explain because at some point being misunderstood carried emotional consequences. And the second loop is this: there is a way to stop explaining that doesn't create conflict and doesn't abandon your values. There is a sentence you can use next time. We'll come back to it, and it matters more than you might expect. Many empaths grew up learning that emotional harmony was their responsibility. Not because anyone said it directly, but because the environment taught it. You may have learned that tension meant danger, that someone else's discomfort needed your attention, that clarity was the way to restore closeness. So your system adapted. It learned to explain preemptively, thoroughly, carefully. Not because you're dramatic, because connection felt fragile. Here's a reframe that often brings relief. Explaining isn't always communication. Sometimes it's self-protection. It's your body saying, if they understand my intentions, maybe this feeling will pass. And sometimes it works briefly, but often it doesn't. And here's the part no one tells you. The more you explain to someone who isn't regulating themselves, the more activated you become. Picture a familiar scene. You set a simple boundary. You say you can't do something, or you need space, or you're not available to talk. The other person reacts. Maybe they question you. Maybe they look hurt. Maybe they go quiet. And suddenly you're explaining everything: your stress level, your history, your reasons. 10 minutes later, you feel exposed and oddly smaller. That's not because you failed. It's because your boundary turned into a defense. This is where compassion meets clarity. You are allowed to be misunderstood by people who are not willing to meet you halfway. And even hearing that can create tension inside. Because another part of you says, but what if they think I don't care? What if they leave? What if I hurt them? And here's the part no one tells you. Peace often begins the moment you stop trying to manage how you're perceived. There's an important distinction here. Explaining to connect feels grounded in the body. Explaining to be accepted feels urgent, tight, rushed. If you pay attention, your body already knows the difference. The problem isn't that you don't have boundaries. It's that you talk yourself out of them. Let me offer a boundary sentence that many empaths find surprisingly stabilizing. I'm comfortable with my decision, even if it's hard to understand. Another one sounds like this: I don't need to explain myself further. And one more, especially important when guilt shows up, is simply, I hear your feelings and I'm still choosing this. These aren't harsh, they're complete. Before we go further, I want to give you a simple 1-minute reset you can use the next time the urge to explain rises. When you notice that pull in your chest, slow your breath just slightly. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Let your shoulders drop a fraction. Press your feet into the floor, your body into the chair. Then say silently to yourself, I don't need permission to honor my limits. Breath, body, sentence. That's how you interrupt the reflex. Here's something subtle but important. Over-explaining often comes from hope. Hope that if you say it the right way, the other person will finally respond differently. But that hope can keep you stuck in conversations that cost you your energy. And here's the part no one tells you. Clarity does not require agreement. So let me ask you a few gentle questions just to notice what's true for you. When you explain yourself, do you feel calmer afterward or more depleted? Who are you most likely to explain yourself to? What feeling are you trying to prevent in them? And what might change if you trusted that being misunderstood doesn't equal being unsafe? We're not taking your voice away. We're freeing it from constant defense. In the next part, we'll talk about what actually happens when an empath stops explaining, how guilt tries to pull you back in, and how peace begins to settle in your body when you stay grounded in your choice. When you stop explaining, something uncomfortable often shows up first. Silence, a pause that feels too long. A look on someone's face you can't immediately soothe. And for an empath, that moment can feel almost physical, like your body is leaning forward even when you're trying to stay still. This is usually where guilt enters. Not because you did something wrong, but because your nervous system is used to equating peace with reassurance. Here's the part that's rarely said out loud. Guilt doesn't always mean you crossed a moral line. Often it just means you broke a familiar pattern. Your system expects you to follow the old script, to explain, to soften, to rescue the connection. When you don't, it protests. And if you don't understand this, you'll assume the guilt means you should go back and fix it. But guilt is often just the echo of conditioning. Listen closely to this reframe. Discomfort is not danger. Someone else feeling unsettled does not mean you are unsafe or unkind. And here's the part no one tells you. When you stop explaining, you give other people the opportunity to regulate themselves. Someone? But either way, you stop carrying work that was never yours. There's a quiet shift that begins to happen when you stay with your boundary. Your body starts to learn that nothing terrible happens when you don't over-justify. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts slow. You begin to feel more solid in yourself. Not because everyone agrees with you, but because you agree with you. That's where peace actually comes from. Let's talk about the moment guilt tries to pull you back in. It often sounds like an internal voice saying, maybe I should just explain one more time. Or, I don't want them to think I don't care. When that voice shows up, try responding internally with something grounded and true. I can care and still choose myself. Or, their reaction belongs to them. Or, even, I'm allowed to be done with this conversation. These aren't affirmations. They're reminders of reality. Here's another boundary sentence you can use when silence feels too hard, but explaining feels worse. I've shared what I'm comfortable sharing. Notice how that closes the door without slamming it. And here's one more. Especially for emotionally charged situations, I'm going to step back from this now. You don't owe anyone a dissertation on your inner world. As you practice this, you may notice something surprising. Some people will adjust. They'll meet you with more respect when they realize you're not going to argue for your boundaries. Others may push harder, not because you're wrong, but because the old dynamic benefited them. And here's the part no one tells you. How someone responds to your boundary gives you information, not a verdict on your worth. I want to invite you into a brief self-check you can use in real time. You can even whisper these questions to yourself if you need to. Am I explaining to connect or to be accepted? Do I feel steady in my body right now? What would it look like to stop at this sentence? And if I don't explain, what am I afraid will happen? These questions bring you back into choice. Over time, something gentle but profound begins to change. You feel less urgency to be understood by everyone. You speak more simply. You pause more often. You recover your energy faster after interactions. Peace doesn't arrive as a dramatic event. It shows up as less tension in your shoulders, more quiet in your mind, and a growing trust in yourself. This doesn't mean you never explain again. It means you explain from clarity, not fear. From choice, not reflex. From self-respect, not self-erasure. And when you do speak, your words tend to land more cleanly because they're not carrying the weight of anxiety. So if you're in a season where you're learning to say less, to let pauses exist, to allow others to sit with their reactions, you're not becoming distant. You're becoming regulated. You're letting peace begin where over-explaining used to live. You don't need to convince anyone to earn rest. You don't need to be perfectly understood to be worthy of calm. When the empath stops explaining, the nervous system finally has space to exhale. In the next video, we'll talk about how to stay connected without self-abandoning, especially when you care deeply and don't want to lose yourself again.